Why, hello my fellow apes. I see that you've opted for the video tutorial, and as a dyslexic, I can't blame you. You play the game by placing both the argument deck and draw deck face down. Setting aside the argument deck, deal 3 cards to the player going first and 5 to everyone else. You then turn over the first argument for all to see, and the game begins. On your turn, you play as many fallacy and action cards as you desire, but if you choose not to play any cards or are unable, you draw 2 at the end of your turn, whereas if you do play any cards, you draw just 1. Each argument requires a number of fallacy cards to be debunked, and once debunked, those who laid the fallacies are rewarded. For instance, if Sagan laid 1 fallacy and then Darwin laid the last 2 fallacies, Sagan would receive 1 point for the fallacy he laid, whereas Darwin would receive 3 points, 2 for the fallacies and 1 for completing the argument. These points are then set aside to count up at the end. With there now being no arguments on the field, the next argument is turned over, and it's still Darwin's turn. Simple, right? Indeed it is, but here's where the strategy comes in. Knowing when and where to play your action and reaction cards is the key to victory. For instance, Darwin might now attempt to switch his small hand with Sagan's many, only for Sagan to prevent him. There are many action and reaction cards that can be played in a wide variety of tactical and creative ways. The game continues until all arguments have either been debunked or destroyed, and the player with the most points at the end is the winner. If there's a draw, then whoever has the most argument cards wins, and if there's still a draw, the person with the hit slap wins. And that, my fellow apes, is the basics of Debunked. But let's now cover the details. First, while you can play as many fallacy and action cards on your turn as you wish, if a fallacy is already played against an argument, you cannot play a duplicate. For instance, if you had a false cause fallacy, but someone else had already laid a false cause against the argument, you can't lay yours. Second, once the draw deck is empty, shuffle the discard pile and place it face down as the new draw deck. Third, there is no limit to the number of cards you may have in your hand. And fourth, reaction cards can be played whenever the conditions are met, be it during your turn or anyone else's. So let's now turn our attention to the asterisk cards. Oi oi, here comes the PC police. When an argument is censored, permanently remove it from the game, do not return it to the argument deck, and place all applied fallacy cards into the discard pile. Knock knock, Zeus's witnesses. When a player plays 1 or more fallacy cards against an argument, you can play a distract card to discard all of the fallacy cards that they've played against that argument during that turn. For instance, if someone played 1 fallacy card, then stole a card, and then played another fallacy card, a distract would discard both fallacies since they were played during the same turn. To play the almighty hit slap card, one must simultaneously play at least 1 required fallacy card. If successfully played, the argument is instantly debunked, regardless of how many fallacy icons it has remaining, and the player then receives every fallacy played against it, including those played by others, and the hit slap card itself as points. If someone prevents the hit slap goes into the discard pile but the fallacies remain, whereas if someone plays a distract card, the hit slap and the played fallacies are discarded. It's time to gish gallop, methinks. Overload cards quite simply bring an additional argument into play. However, once the overloaded or original argument is debunked or removed, do not replace it. With the exception of overload cards, new arguments only activate when no other arguments remain in play. On the 3rd day, he stopped decaying. Good for him. Resurrection cards allow a player to look through the discard pile to replay 1 card immediately, and thus the card does not go into the player's hand. Consequently, cards such as Distract, Hit Slap and Prevent can't be resurrected, whereas cards such as Overload, Blasphemer and Skip can. And talking of skip, to Galileo someone, place the skip card in front of them. For the next 2 turns, they can't play any fallacy cards. They can, however, still play action and reaction cards, such as Rhetoric. At any time, players can play a Prevent to discard the skip. To remind players of how many turns have gone by, we recommend turning the card 90 degrees after the first turn, and then of course discarding it after the second. And there you have it, my fellow apes. You now know how to play Debunked, and you're ready to hit slap your friends at once. Now get out there and debunk.